Hey guys, happy Tuesday night. This is May the 7th. So, I've used a video clip from this guy before when I was making the comparisons between New Testament Christian Church and the Jehovah's Witnesses. And because I listen to his stuff very infrequently, but when the title of this one popped up, which makes me realize titles are more important than I give them credit for, and I need to work on that a little better. But listen to what he says. I am going to break it up. My intention is not to just rebroadcast what he recorded, but to take certain things from it and to present something to you that I've thought many times since I got out in 2006. There are quite a few things he says where I'm like, dude, get out of my head. But I'm glad because I think he's more articulate than I am, and he's good at just getting to the point. And it shows that this is a commonality among extremists, high control, cult groups, or any variation thereof. So let's listen to him and see what he has to say.
But I feel this particular subject that you'll have seen in the thumbnail perhaps, why don't you just move on? You hear it so much, and I continue to hear it in the comments from, random people commenting on the video. I think it's really something that's worth delving into again, don't you? Because it's actually quite a traumatizing thing, I think, to say to somebody. And just to be clear, it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses who say this. So I routinely get Jehovah's Witnesses watching my videos. Thanks, guys. Lovely to have you with us. And they clearly don't appreciate seeing their beloved organization, their beloved leaders, their beloved faith being subjected to any kind of criticism.
I think I was really surprised when I first got out, and I'd been studying and all, trying to figure out what had happened. How did I get involved in this thing going way back? And one of the first times someone said, first of all, you're all lumped together, of course, because as I've said before, you're not individuals. No. You're all a group. You're all meeting in a secret bunker somewhere. I don't know what they think, but they think whatever. Well, part of the problem is they don't think. Those who say things like this, those who parrot what they hear in the group. And so I just want to read something to you that I pulled up from FactNet. I need to reposition my microphone. I will do it. I did it. So this goes back to September of 2005 on FactNet. I just did Control F and looked for Move On, and this was one of the first ones I found. And it's a whole thread that says Move On. That was easy to find. And this person, their username was Mama Bear. And they said, I've been reading a lot of posts on here about NTCC and have come to the conclusion that a lot of people on here are just ex-pastors who are bitter for one reason or another. I just want to say, move on. And so we'll keep reading this in a moment, but let's hear more of what Lloyd has to say.
And rather than dealing with the criticism itself or with the arguments that I'm making, they just dismiss everything as, oh, he's just a bitter, disgruntled former member. why can't he just move on? Having decided that it's not for him, why does he need to open his mouth?
And I want to say here, he's, I think, going to talk more about it, but this was fascinating to me because it's so true, and I'd forgotten about that. You get a lot of people that are still in the group that will say, why don't you move on? You're bitter. You're malevolent. But it's very true, and I remembered that from FactNet, that there are also a lot of people who left the group, who no longer go. For some reason, they showed up on FactNet. For most of us, I'm not going to say all, I can only speak to the many that I came to know, and I came to cherish what they wrote, and I came to really, especially now, all these years later, I cherish what they wrote more because it's here. It's here on the internet still. It's here to be found. And I'm very appreciative of that. That people took the time to write, and you can see you can see the difference in tone and in purpose. And you can judge for yourself in the same way now. You can judge tone and purpose and say, well, I may not agree with Tracy that she has taken on this desire to compulsion, I will say, to warn and expose, but that's not where I'm at in my life. But a lot of times people can't even be that gracious or that understanding. And so I thought when he said that, I was like, yes, that is so true. People who leave want to tell you what to do.
About this. How dare he explain his reasons for leaving and do so in a way that might be persuasive for other people? How dare he, And surely there's something wrong with him for him to fixate over our precious organization. So that can be the mindset, and obviously I may be exaggerating a little, but that can be the mindset of a Jehovah's Witness who tunes into this channel. But it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses who say this. You also might hear it from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, people who have woken up years ago in some way, shape or form. They've distanced themselves from the organization. They've realized that it's wrong and in many cases abusive. And they've decided that it's not for them. And not only is it not for them, but they don't want to hear anything about it, which is obviously completely their right to make that decision, And who can blame them? Because it can be quite traumatic to revisit a source of perhaps personal trauma again and again and again.
When he said that, I was reminded of something. Because I do read a lot of comments and have through the years of people that, like this person, Mama Bear, that I started reading. No one was forcing that person to come on FactNet and to read anything. In fact, there's a point where I assume it's a woman. So please stop allowing the devil to use you and get a life. Go serve God and leave us alone. Leave us alone. You're only not left alone in your mind there if you come onto this universal forum and start reading, because nobody's forcing flyers under the door at NTCC at that time. No one was doing anything forceful. It started out where a young lady answered a question, and I thought she did it very balanced, and it all just lit up. It got lit, and it got lit because of Keckle and because of George Jordan and some others. So um, I don't I don't want to mention one of the other gentlemen who was very vocal, because he has since passed away and he wouldn't be around to defend himself. Um, I don't afford that same I don't afford that same thought to Davis, because he started this whole thing. He started this whole organization. He started this mess. He created he created a mess. Literally a mess. Anyway, what I was thinking of when he said this part was um, people just want to show up and tell you what you should or shouldn't do, instead of just going away and saying, this doesn't apply to me. Um, and so I'll press on. But they want to then preach or tell people what to do, to try to force you to stop. So it was reminding me. Now, the movie A Clockwork Orange, I believe, came out in the early 70s. And so 71, 72, I was 9 and 10. And so at some point, they must have put it back out in the movies, in the theaters. I don't know when. I don't know if it was like a cult type movie, like some become, such as the Rocky Horror Picture Show. But I recall going to see it with on a date. So it had to be either in high school, like maybe my last 2 years of high school, or right after. And I was petrified of this because it is like a dystopian movie, and I don't like violence. I can't watch it. I just can't. Have a difficult time. Very difficult time. But there's a point where the main character is in a room and he's being forced, with his eyelids open. I've never forgotten this. He's being forced to watch and hear things. And he cannot close his eyes to get away from it. Oh, it gives me the willies just thinking about it. And so that's almost the way people behave. It's as if you are forcing them in a room to listen to what you have to say. You know, if you come by and say, oh no, this is not for me, everybody's different. Everybody's different. We're not all the same as they tried to make us in the group. Automatons, Stepford wives, whatever you want to call them. Just going along, moving through life in a cookie cutter way. And that's what it is. Anyway, I thought I'd slip that in there if you ever get a chance to see a clip of A Clockwork Orange.
And hear this stuff from your childhood that perhaps messed you up and messed up your life. And I can understand people who say, you know what, I just don't want to think about it anymore. But then some of those people who do that go one step further and say to people like me and to my viewers, well, you should do the same. You should make the same decision that I've made, and you shouldn't even be thinking about this stuff or talking about it. Why don't you move on?
This part reminds me of one of the first comments that I got on YouTube when I rebooted being online. And this person wrote 7 months ago, "Woo, child, y'all don't have anything better." Y'all, I guess they mean me. I'm living in the South now, so I know y'all can be one or more than one. Y'all don't have anything better to do than to trash talk people. I hope you don't think God is pleased with what you're doing. I am confused. Maybe if that person is confused, it's because maybe they don't know for sure if God is pleased or not. Anyway, I know what God has called me to do, and it is definitely not what you all in your ministry is doing for a fact. Okay, and instead of doing all of that, why don't you teach about salvation on what really matters? That is the calling. That's some people's calling. It's not everyone's calling. And I find it interesting, and I've talked about enablers before, people who want to sweep under the rug the erroneous doctrines, the terrible behaviors, the mistreatment of people, the breakup of marriages and families through shunning. That is enabling the bad behavior, especially if you come out publicly and say, you should stop talking about it. Be like me. Do what I tell you to do. But I'm good. I don't have time for this back and forth stuff. Too much positive things that I rather put my energy in. Therapy is for all the other stuff. And even in therapy, they are going to tell you that you're going to have to move forward at some point in time. I don't know if this person is a therapist. Maybe they are. Lingering in the past sure doesn't fix anything. They don't know that, do they? Sometimes you have to linger there. Lingering doesn't mean remaining, but to linger, that's something totally different. Anyway, let's hear more of Lloyd.
So ironically, the ex-Jehovah's Witness ends up being on the same page or saying the same thing as the Jehovah's Witness. You could also have someone who's never been one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Let's say, for example, you are a spouse or a partner of an ex-Jehovah's Witness, or you're a friend of an ex-Jehovah's Witness, or maybe you are a psychologist and your client is an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I can fully imagine scenarios in which such a person might say, well, why don't you just move on? Why are you talking about this? Why are you watching videos on YouTube about this? Why are you making YouTube videos about this? Why are you talking about this on social media? Don't you think you should move on? So interestingly, you can have people from very different backgrounds with very different biases all saying the same thing. And I guess my answer is, it's for each individual to decide whether they want to move on and whether they are at the point in their life, at the point in their journey where they are ready to move on and not talk about something or not research something anymore. But here's the thing with cults, with groups like Jehovah's Witnesses that dig into your life, that embed themselves so thoroughly to the point where they can estrange you from your family and do all sorts of damage in your personal relationships.
This aspect of it all is another huge similarity, not just between NTCC and JWs, but with almost every single strain of cult, of authoritarian high control group, extremist group.
I think that there is a danger sometimes when you experience all of that trauma and all of that abuse, quite frankly. There's a danger of slipping into denial when you say, oh, I'm going to move on. So you're not really moving on. You're just pretending to move on. You're just I can fully imagine people just kind of sticking their heads in the sand and kind of going, la, 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 that didn't happen. I don't think that's genuinely moving on. I think that's being in denial. I think quite often when something traumatic happens, and I'm saying this as someone with no mental health credentials whatsoever, this is just my opinion, but I think when something traumatic happens to you, it's a healthy thing to understand what's been done to you and how it's been done.
Without anyone encouraging me to do so, when I first got out of NTCC, that's one of the first things I did. I wanted to understand it all. There, of course, the internet was a very different landscape back in January 2006. And it didn't even happen immediately. I did get some books, and then I just immersed myself in trying to understand how in the world I ignored every single red flag. What was it within me that caused me to soldier on? And I highly recommend it for everyone, is to find out what's the deal. What was I involved in? How do I move on in a healthy way? Just something that helps a lot, and we didn't have this right away until we as a family went back on FactNet because someone had mentioned that we were out. And so we came out to say it ourselves and to say reasons why. Of course, we've always shared that 17-page letter that we sent to Davis and the Keckles, and that's over on the blog, and I have a link in the description. But that is really an important aspect, is understanding it and then finding a sense of community of people, because you cannot just talk to anybody about any of this. You need to find someone you feel safe with, and every person you will find out that's out will not be sympathetic. Trust me on that. They will not be. So choose wisely, carefully, with discretion for everyone involved. Keep your knowledge and your relationships. I'm going to use that word. That's the word of the night. Cherish. Is to cherish the relationships and to just handle them with such loving care, and to listen to other people with, even though you've been through the same group, doesn't mean your experiences were the same. Not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. And so all of this helps in progressing away. But when you've had children and a whole family involved, or if you've been involved in the ministry, it adds all of that adds levels that you try to sort out and figure out so that you don't do it again. People leave NTCC and go right into, I've seen a few, not many, I've seen a few go into other cults, other high control groups. And it just saddens me beyond measure.
And what impact it's had. And I think once you have fully absorbed what's happened to you and fully understood what's happened to you and the fact that it's still happening to other people.
Yes, for sure that it's happening to other people, and it is yet to happen to other unsuspecting souls who will wander in.
Then you're in a much better place to, again, decide for yourself whether you want to move on and think about other things. And even when you do that, I don't think you should feel guilty if every now and then you want to just kind of stick your head around the door and just see what's going on with the dumpster fire that you left behind, you know? Again, I think all of this is healthy. It's a healthy thing. But what I think is toxic is when other people, for whatever reason, whether it's personal bias or some kind of inferiority complex or just some kind of emotional detachment, I think it's toxic when other people tell you what you should do and at what point you have moved on. I don't think that's helpful whatsoever. And daring to assert your boundaries and your rights. And that's the problem that's facing many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, is that they are an aggrieved party. You know, they have experienced, in some cases, massive emotional trauma, in some cases, physical or sexual trauma. And compounding matters, you know, beyond measure, is the fact that everyone that they care about who should be on their side and who should be sympathizing with them and putting their arms around them and being there for them is instead being weaponized against them through shunning.
And it is over 50 years too late for anyone to come along and say, no, that's not a thing, because everyone knows it is, and many of us engaged in it, and it still goes on today, sadly.
Or being otherwise convinced that actually the problem isn't with this benign group that bothers people on a Saturday morning. No, it's with you as an individual for daring to change your mind about being in that group and for daring to leave. That's why it's wrong and frankly messed up to tell someone, you know, why don't you move on? Isn't that what any bully or narcissist wants their victims to do? Just, you know, move on. I've succeeded in pulling off this perfect crime, so you can just move on now, you know? Not how it works, I'm afraid. I think that people who have been victimized in any way, shape or form deserve, bare minimum, to be able to speak up about it, even if they, for whatever reason, can never get back what they lost. The bare minimum that they should be afforded is the space and time to not only process what they've done, what's happened to them, but to talk about it and to say, this isn't right, this is wrong, what's happened. And when I was watching my video from 10 years ago, I found the following clip quite interesting.
Anyone who says that you should just move on when an aggressor who has damaged you, who has taken something from you, continues to take things from others, continues to operate without any kind of punishment, without any kind of reprisals, without any kind of consequences, and does so under your very nose, influencing those that you love, so that on a daily basis you're reminded of what's been done to you. Anyone who says I should move on from that doesn't understand what Watchtower's doing, doesn't understand my situation, or if they do understand those things, they're being deeply insulting. So that would be my answer to anyone who says, well, you should just move on. You do realise that, don't you? No. eventually I hope to reach a stage where I've made a contribution that I feel happy with, and I feel I can kind of back down a little bit. I do hope to reach that stage someday. I'm nowhere near it at the moment. But as of now, while I have the energy, while I have the time, while I have the willpower and the ability, this is what I'm doing. And if you don't like it, then tough.
I'm in total agreement when I heard him say that, while he had the ability and the energy and all of that, I feel the same exact way. That there is a point where you, for whatever reason, the compulsion, and I can honestly say this is a thing where I've been totally touched by the stories of those who cannot tell them. They cannot make their names or their faces known. That is a problem. Why can't they? You have to say, why can't they do that? And so what started out for myself, for soldiers, for all in the military, for the lost kids of NTCC, I can't even say that without getting upset, because I've met through this almost last year. It's almost been a year. I have to actually check. I think my daughter and I spoke. It was May of 2023. So I'll have to see. But the kids, because I have two that were born in and brought up in that group. They spent their formative years there, as so many others have. Some have their whole family out, as we do. Some do not. I think about that. I probably think about that every single day. And you all know who you are. And I hope you know how much I deeply care for you on all levels. For anyone that shows up to comment, people going way back to the beginning of this organization, because they care. Because they care. They don't have some axe to grind, and you can tell by their posts. They understand how important it was to all of us to read things online and realize, wow, so behind the scenes, this is how my pastor or leaders are talking to other people? Are you kidding me? It's shocking. Totally shocking. Why isn't it shocking to some of you?
So yeah, there's me from 10 years ago saying, if you want to shut me up, basically, good luck. But I've got lots more to say. And to a degree, I still feel that way. I still feel that fire in my belly, that total indignation at the unfathomable abuse that goes on with this organization. And I might add that in that 10 years since I said those words, I feel like I've learned so much more about how bad this situation is. I've seen how deep the rabbit hole goes, or at least as much as I can of how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is absolutely true, and I believe many people who are out and who have taken an interest in learning about their own journey, but usually it will turn itself outward to where you care about the journey of others and you learn more stories about situations that it corroborates everything. It corroborates, and you're like, how can you walk away? How can you just not at least do something? Something. And there are a lot of people who cannot come online and show themselves who they are, but they're still contributing, trust me. Not just encouragement and loving words and support, but providing things that they've learned and that things that that affect them in a positive way, and resources that I didn't even know about. They just have opened up the world to me in learning more. It's so much. I feel like I have homework every day, and it's interesting, and I want it to be helpful. It's hard to sort through it because you're like, what do I put first? And like tonight, this had been on my mind anyway. And then that's why his post about just move on caught my attention.
And at some point, I will need to walk away. And I'm certainly closer to walking away now than I was back then, 10 years ago. But when I do walk away, when I do kind of make my last video, or when I do completely scale down to the point where I talk about it very, very rarely, that's going to be my decision, you know? I'll be the one making that call. It won't be because some random person online has said, you should just move on, you know? No one's going to tell me that. And I guess my point is, no one should tell you that either. You should decide for yourself if you have been traumatized by a cult-like group or a narcissistic group or individual. No one gets to tell you. No one gets to tell you to just move on.
Before I play the rest of Lloyd's little last bit here where he signs off, I'm in total agreement with how he encourages people. You do what you need to do for yourself, not based on what other... We spent too many years worrying about what a man or a woman thought. Burdens placed upon all of us that were not biblical, that were man-made, and they're still doing it. And so I said, you know, you will hear these things. I'm not the first person to have some things directed. And here's a couple of recent ones. This person's name is Margaret Carter. I get it. You're bitter, or you've been hurt by someone in the church. This is someone who clearly did not read or listen to one thing. Not one. So where did they get their information from? They had to get it from someone. But it wasn't from me. They did not read my words. They did not listen to my voice. I get it. You're bitter. No bitterness here. I defy anyone to find the bitterness, to find the trash talk. Or you've been hurt by someone in the church. No. The only hurt that comes is when you think the leaders understand that things going on in the group are not good. And there's a point where they're with you. I think, as I mentioned in the other video, there is that line, that border line. You cross it, and they realize this person isn't coming back to us. They have too many questions. They're not on board for promoting tithe or hell, or telling men they're going to hell if they don't cut their hair, and women they're going to cut their, if they Good gracious, now I sound like the president. Senile. When you show that you're not on board with requiring certain outward holiness standards, you know what I'm saying? I just mixed that all up. It's late. So, as far as hurt by someone in the church, you feel betrayed a little bit, but it's such a small thing in light of everything else. And I don't know how many times I have to share reasons why we left, and like I said, it's right on the blog, the exact letter photocopied that we sent. So this person, Margaret, you're welcome to go read it, but she goes on to say, why don't you just move on? I'm sorry, now that's going to be funny to me. And get yourself a new home church. Get yourself one. They don't know what you have or don't have. This person doesn't know me. Get yourself a new home church and enjoy the rest of your life. That's it. That's the answer. A home church. Get yourself a building to go to every day, every week, and enjoy the rest of your life as if I'm not right now. Please remember that your most important relationship is with God himself and not with people. Jesus told us to forgive others when they offend us, not just for their sakes, but for ours. Finally, Pastor Keckle, she made a comment, but it's not in good English here, so I really don't know what she was trying to say. I hope you find a new church home where you can serve God happily. Well, thank you for that, but there are a lot of assumptions made here. This other person, there was, I think, a 1-day period or 2 days where they just shot out like 8 comments or so, 6 to 8 comments. Their handle is stay away from you. Okay? This was about a month ago. Wow. Seems like instead of hiring a therapist to vend your egregious issues, I guess they meant vent, you chose a venue where you can vent your anger for free. Bah ha ha, cringe. Most of the people that left my family of God can't seem to leave quietly. So there we go. This person they seemingly drank some of the Kool-Aid, and they believe if you leave NTCC, you've left the whole family of God and you're no longer a Christian. Most of the people, that left my family of God can't seem to leave quietly. So they want to tell you how to leave and what you're allowed to say or not say because they live in that kind of environment. I get it. I wonder if you/they do the same thing when departing from an employer, LOL. I'm not sure what's so funny about any of this. I don't know what's funny. That's not funny. If you worked for someone and they were evil and they were someone that didn't pay people, you would try to spread the word, right? Cringe. Get over it and move on, LOL. Get over it and move on, LOL. Why is that funny? This same person, stay away from you. 1 month ago, you and your close friend watch our services and discuss it, only to criticize and not feast on the Word of God? What does any of that even mean? You said a friend is someone that you can say anything to? ? Exclamation point, ? Bah ha ha. My pastor is pastoring us. Give over it. We, NTCC, know we aren't the only ones saved and going to heaven. Really? Okay. Did you yawn? ? Sigh, LOL. Move on. You'd feel much better. I have a lot to say about this one, but I have a feeling whatever I'm thinking, a lot of people are already thinking. So we will leave that one at that. These were some of the recent ones. I'll save the FactNet comments, the rest of them, for for a different day when it's just FactNet stuff. And otherwise, let's hear the ending of Lloyd's message. And I wish you all an amazing Wednesday, hump day. And shoot me a message if you have any questions or comments, or you just want to tell me about yourself. Thanks, guys. Oh, and if I didn't do this at the beginning of the video, I meant to. I really want to thank everyone who has newly subscribed in the past couple days on YouTube. And also there's a couple more on Facebook. Again, I don't ask for them because ultimately there's so many people that just can't. It's not a true reflection of anything, but I look at it personally as amazing support. I see those numbers and I just think, I say it out loud. I'm sure my family's heard me like, thank you, I appreciate you. I really, really, really do.
You move on in your own way and according to your own time scale. And once you have been able to fully absorb and process what's been done to you, and no one gets to say otherwise. Sorry. So I hope this video has been useful and helpful in some way.